Well, hello everybody. Welcome to our fourth AIS, Aesthetic Innovation Summit. We are so excited to have you and to have this program again. Thank you all for coming, for registering, participating. Thank you to my co-chairs, Philippe Cezanne and Karen Long. Excuse me. We've had a wonderful time planning this program for the last 9 months. And our first speaker actually needs no introduction. Dr. Steve Diane, he is the medical director of MedSpa Partners and many other accolades. Steve, where are you? He's out of the Chicago area, but he's a man of the world. He only spends about 2 weeks in the States a year. Steve, may I make the special announcement that you let me know earlier? And his partner, Sabrina, is pregnant. Come on up, Daddy-O.
It's really a secret, so please don't tell anyone. But I am the father, I'm sure of it. All right, well, I am super glad to be here. Are my slides up? Over there? Okay, great. So Grant tells me I only have 15 minutes to talk, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, faster than I want to go through it, but I'm really excited to give you some insights into my thoughts on how to approach a physician in today's market, which I think has been quite different because we're in a leaning recession period. We're post-COVID in a corporate world. And I think that you have to speak with doctors very differently today than we did in the past. What are we seeking? In particular, trust and passion. If someone doesn't have trust, there's no future. If someone doesn't have passion, there's no presence. Every time I see someone and I know they're leaving their company, I can tell right away because they have no passion. They're like, yeah, well, they talk about their product and they have no passion. If you don't have passion, I'm not going to have passion for your product either. What's the best way to approach a physician in today's world? Well, I'm going to use this as the best way to communicate with a physician in today's world. Of course, you can go cold. And for those of us who are Gen X's, we remember back in the day when you had to meet someone, there wasn't Tinder. You had to go into a nightclub or a bar. You would speak to maybe 10 different people, and you would get continuously rejected. That was going cold, and you hope that you met someone and you had a nice conversation. That rarely happened. Most of the time, nothing happened very well. Of course, you can have cold sales materials left on your chair. This is materials that were left in my office. I walk into my office. These are sitting on my chair. Do you think I'm going to actually look at these? No, it's cold, just left. You need to talk to me if you want me to be interested in your products. Here's a cold email that comes to me, and this email is not going to be very effective, especially when it says, "Hi, Stephen." I know if they're calling me Stephen, they don't know that I'm Dr. Diane. That's usually a first response is going to be like that. And this person, as you can see, says, "You ignored my previous emails." So a cold email has zero value. You could be one of many at a trade show, and maybe that's a great way to go. But the reality is there's so many at trade shows, it's hard to stand out when you're the only one in this trade show group. So ideally, the best way to communicate or get your message across to a bunch of physicians and providers, I think, is word of mouth. This is the old-fashioned way, although word of mouth has changed significantly. Physicians from the podium, incredibly influential, and it does work. And how do I know? Because I do speak a lot at various conventions, as does Sabrina, my partner, as do many of my friends. You'd be surprised how many phone calls we get for the next 2 to 3 weeks based on something we say from the podium. So it's incredibly influential if your product can get onto the podium and get announced from an influential leader. Also, the back of the room. And you know this as well as I do. So many of the ways in which we learn about new products, new innovations, is from what happens at the back of the room. So yes, we're loving the MSP brand. Steve, what do you think? And I'll talk to them about it. And one thing will lead to another. And almost always something good happens from that. Other ways in which we can get messages across about your new product or your new device is in the journal clubs, in the hallways, when we're back in the hospitals, or we're back in our clinics, or I'm in the surgery center. I'll meet with 4 or 5 doctors every single day in the surgery center, and we'll chat about new things. Have you tried this? Is that working for you? This is where the real information comes across and how we decide what we want to use. Some doctors prefer journal articles, so I think there's a value in some of these journal articles. There's no doubt about it. If you have something and it's published and it goes in a journal article, it endures, it's out there for a while, and I think there's value. But never in the history of humanity has there ever been a way to reach so many so fast, so easily. for so little. And that is social media. And we all know that social media is really the easiest way to reach a huge group of people. And I used to say that it's the single most important aspect of growing an aesthetic medical business. No, for any business. If you're not in social media today and you haven't captured this and you're not mastering this, then I don't think your product is really going to get known the way it should be. And I say this to all my fellows and residents, you better learn how to become efficient in social media, find what works best for you. Sabrina and I have done this program called Thriving for the last 4 years. It grows tremendously. We walk into places now around the world, and people get epileptic when they see Sabrina. They're like, "Oh my gosh!" They think she's like this celebrity, and they all take pictures with her. And it's really amazing how influential a program like this can be. We get over 200,000 people now who choose to turn into one of our programs. I never would imagine that something like this could have been so effective 4 years ago during COVID. And this year, now that Sabrina's pregnant, you got to tune in to watch, because I'm sure it's going to be a hell of a story when that gets put out there. But keep in mind, not all providers are the same. There's dermatologists, there's plastic surgeons, there's many types of plastic surgeons, there's providers, there's non-core, there's nurses, physician's assistants. We're all very different, and we think differently. And when you start to put us into one group, it doesn't work well. Our individuality is defining. And we've all seen situations in which messages have gone out trying to lump us all together, and it doesn't land well. It really doesn't land well at all. And it can be discouraging, it can be defeating, and it could lead to a lot of ill will. So if you're going to pick a group, and you're going to say that this one group is, whether they're a prestige group or they're the KOLs or they're Democrats or Republicans, whatever you want to, if you try to lump us all into one group, well, eventually what you're also saying is that group over there is not. So yes, you guys are the important ones, but this group is not. Well, you just created a lot of enemies and a lot of people. For what reason? Business is hard enough. Why go out there and have people root against you? So know us as individuals and approach us as individuals, but not one group is so much better than the other group. I think it gets you in trouble. So I would always say, do your research. I have many times where someone comes into my office and they're like, "Dr. Diane, it's so nice to meet you. I heard you're a world-famous dermatologist." No, I'm not a dermatologist. I'm a plastic surgeon. I'm a facial plastic surgeon. And had you looked into my background, you would have noticed that, but sometimes they don't do that. But it's so easy today to do a quick evaluation of a physician. You know quickly whether they are what they are and where they come from, where they went to school. So I suggest doing that. Now you're going to go into a doctor's office or a provider's office. You're going to meet with them. I kind of think of it like when I was a kid, we used to have to go knock on doors. And I had to, if I was going to take a girl on a date back in the day, I'd like, "Hello, Mr. Loopner, and Steve, Diane, I'm here to take your daughter out for dinner." And it was very stressful. It was difficult. But I had to treat the father and the mother very nicely. And you sat there on edge, but that was critically important. And I think today there's a component to that. Treat the staff well. Because if someone comes into my office, they don't treat my staff well, then clearly I'm going to get the message that they're not treating my staff well. Okay, you've Googled me, you know everything about myself, you researched me, you met my staff, you were nice to my staff, now we're going to meet for the first time, I'm super excited, but it's only foreplay. It's just the beginning. Now it's like a blind date. So we're going to meet with this doctor. It's like a blind date. I'm going to learn about your product. You're excited to tell me about it, but you don't bring your best friend to a blind date. And you want to get one-on-one. If you can get one-on-one with that person, I think it's great. And when you do it, please don't bring your cell phone. A few years ago, many years ago, one of the big companies hired this new guy, and you all know him, but I'm not going to mention his name. And we went to dinner, and I was so excited to meet him. We were in Paris, and the whole time he was on his cell phone. And he didn't even look at me. It was the most discouraging meeting I ever had with the senior leader. Well, he's no longer a senior leader now. I think there's a lot to be said for that. If your phone is more important than me, then why are we meeting? And it's really terrible. Also, be careful. Don't tell me about other doctors. "Oh, Steve, did you know Dr. Few, he is doing this in..." I love Dr. Few. He's one of my best friends. But I don't know if I want to hear that my next door neighbor is killing it with this device. Don't tell me about other doctors, because it's like telling me about your last boyfriend. I don't really want to hear about your last boyfriend. I don't want to hear about other doctors. So let's not go there. This is the part I really want to get across to you. Provider psychographics. I came up with this concept a few years ago, and I'm telling you, it works. I believe that we can all be split up into psychographics: explorers, warriors, domesticators, and facilitators. Each one of us is one of these archetypes. When we're drunk, when we're old, and when we're young, our archetype comes out. So you are either an explorer, warrior, domesticator, or facilitator. You have one major and one minor.
Your product and the mechanisms of action, and it reminds me of a product that I saw when I was in the frozen tundra in Siberia.
Explorer.
If you can get Dr. Jones to come in here, I will for sure do it. I love that guy.
Domesticator. I got a new product for you. Are you interested?
Yeah, I like the product, but I'm better than anyone there is out there.
Warrior.
Let's get that deal done today.
Facilitator. So I believe that explorers are 5% of the doctors. They're often KOLs. They're early adopters. They're people on the stage. They want to know the science. Warriors are 20% of doctors. They see life as a competition. They always want to square off. Who else is doing this? They want to be the first early adopter because they want to have an edge and say, I am this doctor. I am famous. They're quick to boast how great they are, but they're quick to disparage and put down other people. Social media, they push it to the boundaries because they want to be the person on the edge. Domesticators, they're happy sitting at home on a Saturday night with a bottle of wine. They never need to go out anywhere. They like to sit on the couch. There's 60% of doctors. They're genuinely curious. They want to use the best products. They're not the first to adopt the product, but they are influenced by people that they trust. They're commonly non-core. They're happy and passionate about their practice, and they don't desire to be in the spotlight. They're often introverted. Facilitators are like the business leaders. They run the practices. They're business-minded. They look for commonalities. They look to bring on more staff. They care little about social media, and they may have university appointments. They really want to balance their best interests. So these are my 4 archetypes. I'm going to put them up on my social media. I knew I wouldn't get enough time. So if you go on LinkedIn, I'm going to give you tips on how to communicate with each one of them. I told my staff to post it this morning, and you can see tips on how to communicate with each one of these different groups. I think it works. I'm going to try to go through this quickly because a couple of things I want to show you. But MAPS is when a company suffers from a disease where they just talk about their own product. Recognize there's lots of products out there. You're not the only product. If you expect me just to use your product and no one else's products, we're not living in reality. If you verbally vomit about your product and don't give me a chance to ask any questions, I'm not going to be very interested. Meaningless ad boards. We walk into an ad board. We spend the first 3 hours hearing about how great your product is, but you never once ask me what I think. Doesn't work either. Ask me a lot of questions and listen. That's helpful. I love this concept. Brad Holbrook was a guy who was in Chicago. Steve, what can I do for you? If you say to me, Steve, what can I do for you? I'm very interested. You got me engaged. If you start the conversation with that, then I want to hear more about what you're doing. I want you to simplify my life and give me solutions. That's what I'm really looking for. Yes, we have big egos, else we wouldn't be where we are. Feed the ego. It's not that hard to feed the ego. You can just ask me for advice. Instead of telling me about your product, say, Steve, what do you think? We have this great new exosome product. Do you think exosomes really work? Do you think it's the future? Instead of saying to me, guess what? Our product does X, Y, and Z. If you get me engaged, we're more likely to get to the next part of the conversation. There's 3 questions that we're all going to ask you. You can write these down. Will it result in better patient outcomes? Will it make my life easier? And is it worth it? Those are the things we really want to know. For better outcomes, what I want to see is studies by someone I trust, quicker recovery, and predictable results. Those are the things I'm looking for. Make my life easier. Can I save time? Do I have happier patients? Will you help me with order and inventory management? Can you help me to market it? These are the questions that I want to know when you come into my office. Be ready to answer these. Corporate medicine, this is now here. It will affect all of us significantly. Med spas are opening at an incredibly fast rate. 1,300 new med spas in the last year. 12,000 new injectors. More extended providers. It's no longer a doctor-run field. And with consolidation is roaring through aesthetics right now. It's incredible. It's like drinking from a fire hose. A provider may not be the decision maker anymore. So you must appeal to a procurement officer. It used to be you can twist my arm. It's not like that anymore. So your message now has to be targeted. 3 different ones. What do I want? I want science, I want leadership, and I want research opportunities. What does my extended provider want? Training, teaching, and social networking. What does our corporate leaders want? Low cost. So you have 3 different messages now when you're appealing to me and to us. It's no longer, Dr. Diane, you really should buy this laser because it gives the best results ever, and your patients are going to be happy. No, now it's you got to give me something different than my providers and my corporate leaders. All right, so I gave you a ton of information. I know I went through it super fast. I'll give you the top 10. Maybe we can go through each one at a time afterwards. But trust and passion are essential. You have to have trust and you have to have passion for your products. Peer-to-peer influence is incredibly, incredibly influential. I cannot tell you how if you don't get the peer-to-peers involved in your products, you're not going to do well, because bad word spreads fast. So does good words. Use social media wisely, but it's important. Know the psychographics: domesticators, warriors, facilitators, and domesticators, warriors, facilitators, and explorers. This is going to be on my social media, so take a look at it. Don't verbally vomit. If your product is great, I want to hear about it, but give me a chance to engage with you. If you verbally vomit all about your product and nothing else, then we're not going to get past the conversation. If you start the conversation with, what can I do for you? How can I make your practice better? How can I make your life better? I'm more engaged. Prepare for the ego. Doctors have huge egos. We didn't get here because we don't have huge egos. We put people to sleep. We put their lives in, they have to trust us with their lives. So we have big egos, and I know it's hard sometimes to deal with it. Know the 3 questions. I gave you the 3 questions that every doctor asks. Corporate medicine is here, and it's not going away. And last but not least, target your message. Remember, there's 3 different levels now. There's the doctor, there's a provider, and there's the corporate leaders. So that is my presentation to you on how to translate the secret code. I gave you a ton of information. I'm happy to go into this in depth with you, with any of you afterwards. I appreciate the opportunity. I really like being here. Grant, thank you so much for having me. I did it in 15 minutes, so yes, it was nice. Thank you.